before I get into this video, I just want to tell you guys about the rules for this challenge, for those of you who haven't seen my previous videos. So the big thing is I was only doing maps that took me 12 hours or less, so this excludes maps like Call of the Dead and Town, and this is because I started the challenge about 4 months before the release of Black Ops 6, which meant it wasn't really reasonable for me to try and go for those maps that take like 130 hours, and that's just from one game. That doesn't include all the failed attempts. There was one exception to this, which was Black Ops 3 Nacht, but other than that, all the other maps were 12 hours or less. As well as this, I would also only be doing round-based zombies maps, so no objective-based, like Terra Maledicta from Vanguard. I also didn't include Dead Ops Arcade, because I consider it its own kind of game mode. And finally, for World War II specifically, I wouldn't be using any consumables to give me the most basic kind of experience of the game I could possibly get. So with all of the video info out of the way, let's get into the video. I feel like Call of Duty World War II Zombies is probably the most forgotten about zombies mode in all of COD Zombies history. Because when you look at all of the different Call of Duty games that have come out that have zombies in it, every single game has its own defining feature, ranging from World at War all the way through Vanguard. Whether it's the kind of neon colour scheme that Infinite Warfare went for with Rave in the Redwoods and a little bit on Spaceland, or if it's the exosuit movement from Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, they all kind of have their own distinct kind of characteristics that make them somewhat memorable. For better or for worse, especially in Vanguard's case. But I feel like most people didn't feel like World War II had any like memorable characteristics. And this is kind of just going off of my own chat, because there were a lot of people who didn't actually know what game this was, or like that the game even had zombies on it. And as for high rounds, well, a lot of the high round maps are very boring, but there are a couple of maps that I did have a great time on. So let's get into it. And the first map we're going to start off with is the Final Reich. And if I'm being completely honest, the Final Reich is generally regarded as the best map on World War II. So because at this point we're in the era of choosing your loadout before you go into a match, I would be starting off with the Free Fire ability and the Sap as my starting weapon. And the mods I would be using alongside my Free Fire ability would be Fully Loaded, Specialist Training, and Resourceful. So just very briefly, I'll go over what my Specialist does and the mods. So the Specialist is called Free Fire. When you use this ability, it basically gives you unlimited ammo in your weapons for about 20 seconds. And the mods, what they do, the Fully Loaded ability increases the maximum capacity of my weapons. So the Wonder Weapons, for example, the one I would be using, has 1 in 14 normally or something. And this Fully Loaded just boosts it up to like 1 in 21, which is crazy, because that's like an extra 7 hordes essentially. Special Training increases the rate at which your Specialist charges. So my Free Fire ability, let's say, would take 5,000 points to charge up. Specialist Training makes it recharge faster, so it would be like 4,000 points instead. Just stuff like that. And finally, Resourceful gives an increased chance to spawn power-ups when you kill the zombies. Now, if I'm understanding it correctly, I believe if you don't use Resourceful, you can only get 2 drops per round. But if you use Resourceful, you will actually get 3 drops per round, like round 50 plus. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's what it seemed to do in my games. So anyway, now I would be loading in. And this first room is actually one of the smallest I think I've ever seen. It's pretty much just a little strip. It's honestly probably about the size of the Shadows of Evil first room, but it's honestly pretty cool. And after I open the first gate, this is basically where I would be playing for the majority of the game. But anyway, from about rounds 1 to 5, I would be staying in the first room and shoveling zombies to death, because in this game, you start off with a shovel as your melee weapon, which is pretty cool. And of course, alongside this, I would be using the sap in order to damage them a little bit, but meleeing them in order to get as much points as I possibly could. And then on between rounds 4 and 5, I would leave the spawn area and switch these valves around and turn them on. And this basically allows me to activate this kind of fire pit area. And what happens when you activate it is a bunch of fire will just come up from this well looking thing, and then a bunch of these pests will come spawning out from under there, and they'll be on fire, which is pretty funny to look at. And after you kill them, you can drop down the hole. I mean, you don't even have to kill them in order to drop down the hole, but I'd recommend it. But once you drop down the hole, you'll then want to go up a little bit in order to activate a generator. And this generator then allows you to open up the bunker door, which is like the main area of the map. And honestly, this place is pretty cool. So when you initially go into the bunker, you'll see this mystery box thing here, and this is the mystery box on the game. And the coolest thing about the mystery box on World War II Zombies is that within like, I think 4 or 5 hits of the mystery box, you are always guaranteed to get something called Jack-in-the-Boxes, and Jack-in-the-Boxes is basically World War II's version of the monkey bombs. And if I'm being honest, I genuinely think that the Jack-in-the-Boxes on this game are a bit better than the monkey bombs from like all the other Trail games. Oh, something I forgot to mention, when I was down in the pit, I picked up this Blitz. So perks in this game are called Blitz, and this Blitz was the equivalent of Stamina Up. And Stamina Up in World War II is fucking incredible, because you can, I believe, just infinitely sprint when you have Stamina Up in this game, which is crazy. So yeah, at this point I was in the bunker, but I still didn't have all the power available to me. So what you have to do is you have to go to these 2 switches on either side of the facility and switch them both on within quite a fast amount of time. I think you've only got like 5 minutes max in order to switch them both on. I think if you're in co-op, you have to do both within like 10 seconds, so one person on one end, one person on the other. I don't particularly remember, so that could be completely wrong, but on solo you just go between one and the other, and then boom, that's the power switched on. And once both the power switches were switched on, you can now enter the salt mine, and the salt mine will basically spawn in these bomber zombies. And what it is you've got one zombie on the front running towards you, and a smaller zombie on the back.
Well, there you go, man.
And when it sprints, the zombie on the back will bang its head against the bomb, and it will create that kind of like metallic sound. And what will happen is, if you let that bomber zombie get too close to you, it will just explode the bomb right then and there. But you can actually explode the bomb yourself just by shooting the bomb. Now, what I'd be doing is I would be taking one of these bomber zombies up through the salt mine and through the facility just in front of this locker. And this is because in this locker, if you explode a bomb next to it, it will open up and give you a battery. And this specific battery is going to be for the wonder weapon that I will be using during the course of the game. However, this was just an upgrade for the wonder weapon, and I still needed to get the base wonder weapon, which required me doing part of the casual Easter egg again. So I went down through the salt mine and activated this pillar, and after feeding it a few souls, it would then like make the room all red, and it would get rid of all the power, and you have to switch the power back on. And it's a little bit different this time. What you have to do is there'll be this kind of pyramid looking thing. You've got to crank the wheel on it in order to unravel it or reveal it. And then you have to go up the stairs to this mainframe looking thing and press this button, and that will activate this device. And what you got to do with this device is there'll be a glowing red circle on the ground, and you have to kill zombies inside this circle. This will then charge up the device in order to travel to its destination, and once it reaches its destination, it will give you something called the Tesla gun barrel, and this is in order to craft the initial wonder weapon on the map. And what you then need to do is you need to make your way back. It will travel all the way back and then go to the other side of the facility. You have to repeat the same process and it will give you the other part for the Tesla gun. And then you have everything you need in order to craft the Tesla gun. And you will craft the Tesla gun just up the stairs where the initial box location is. But this time when you go back there, there'll be something a little bit different. And what I mean by different is initially the mainframe area will be set on fire. And there'll be this big ugly motherfucker running towards you with a flamethrower. And you have to kill him before you can really carry on. But once the transfer device has made its way back to the pyramid looking thing that it came out of, you will then be able to craft the Tesla gun. And honestly, the base version isn't very strong, but it's very good for like safety and just the early game, so it's pretty cool. So now that I had the Tesla gun, it was time for me to open up Pack-a-Punch. And in order to open up Pack-a-Punch, what you have to do is run around to these 3 different trash chutes that are on the map, and they'll take you down into this blood room looking thing, and you have to press a button on each of the 3 trash chutes when you drop down, and this will then allow you to unlock Pack-a-Punch. But as I went to the first trash chute, it wouldn't let me down, and that's because you actually have to pretty much complete the casual Easter egg in order to unlock Pack-a-Punch. So the next step after getting the Tesla gun is there'll be this control panel, and it will show you 4 sets of colours, and there can only be 3 different colours per panel, and you have to go and turn on these panels in the order that you basically see them. There's a set route for doing them. Well, actually, each panel has like its own corresponding number at the top of each one, and on the main panel where you see all the colours, you can see which one needs what colour. And so you just run around, set them to the correct colour, and then that's that step of the Easter egg done, the casual one that is. And then the final thing I needed to do was activate the lightning rods and protect them. And then once I'd done this, it was time for me to finally be able to open up Pack-a-Punch. And so once I'd gone down each individual trash chute, I then had Pack-a-Punch unlocked, and I was able to upgrade the sap. Now, for those of you who've played World War II, maybe on launch, but never really played it again, you'll know that the M1911, when Pack-a-Punch, becomes the bacon and eggs, and it's a pretty cool weapon to have because it doesn't deal splash damage to you, even though it's an explosive weapon. But the sap is just absolutely incredible, because as I mentioned earlier, the way the specialist works is the amount of points you get recharges the specialist after it's being used. And the sap is one hell of a good points maker. Not to mention, this little fucking pistol is crazy strong. Like, you're able to one-shot zombies on round 16, which is kind of crazy. And it'll be doing decent damage all the way up until like 30, 40. But anyway, now that I had the sap upgraded, it was time for me to upgrade the Tesla gun into the Hurricane. And you remember that battery I got early on? Well, I placed it in this kind of electricity trap. And now what I had to do is I had to charge up the battery. And in order to do this, you have to get 2 pairs of 2 whistlings or something like that and kill them around the same time in the trap. This will then charge up the battery, and then you can take that battery and where you got one of the Tesla gun pieces, like I think it was the barrel, you basically place it to the left or right of that, whichever one it lets you place it in. And then it was just time for me to defend that area. It's another defend step. This generally lasts around like 30 to 60 seconds. And once it's done, you'll hear some like clanking and all that kind of stuff. And now you'll be able to pick up the Tesla gun barrel for the specific variant of the Tesla gun that you just made. And now where you made the initial Tesla gun, there'll be like 4 other slots. This is for all the different variants. And the one that you'll need to put the Tesla gun barrel in is the one that's basically flaming and like disappearing and coming back up. And so at this point I would place it down, and when I picked it up I got the Hurricane. And the Hurricane is really good for being able to camp as what you do is you shoot it, and it creates a very slow ball, a bit like the lightning staff, but like way slower. And it creates a kind of field around this ball that basically kills all of the zombies around it. And every time it kills a zombie, it slows down a little bit, so it's able to just really kill a load of zombies in just a straight line. Now, normally I would be fully set up at this point, but there was actually a bit of a change to the strategy, which involves using the red talon sword. And in order to get the red talon sword, it's another bit of an Easter egg kind of thing, and you basically have to start the main Easter egg quest, which is the hidden Easter egg. You don't get instructions for this one. And what I needed to do was activate the right hand of God, and this would basically call in a Zeppelin which will attack you. So what you need to do is go outside, shoot the Zeppelin a bit when it has these like red spots on it. These are the parts you can damage it at. They only show up for a few seconds every now and then, but once you've done that, it will fly away, and then that's all you need to do for the main Easter eggs quest. So now what I had to do is go to the parts of the map that had the power switches and switch them both back on. And now there'll be a main panel next to the pyramid looking thing that you can now interact with, and this will open up another panel that's right next to it, which reveals these kind of Tesla core things, and all you need to do is shoot any version of the Tesla gun into it, and it will switch these lights off. Only temporarily, but they'll be switched off around the facility. And now you need to take a Brenner head, which I left one in the facility for this reason, and I had to shine the Brenner head on these two different panels. And now what I think this does is it will illuminate the correct digits for the two codes that you have to input. There's one on the left side and one on the right side of the facility. And once you've done this, it will then allow you to pick up half of the piece from each side to create the full piece, which you then need to take down to the bottom of the salt mine. And then just behind the altar, you'll be able to place these two pieces down, and this will unlock the red talon sword. And this is the one thing I thought I needed for high rounds. You don't really need it, but it makes it a bit more fun. Something I will mention though is I did make the Midnight Wonder weapon, even though I didn't really use it in the game. And all you gotta do to get this is I would shine a Brenner head on this little stone statue here. It would make it crumble, revealing a battery. I would then shoot this battery with a Tesla gun, and I would then charge it by getting kills with the trap, because that's how you charge this one. There's a little holder for it. And then once it's charged, I would take it down to the same place I took the hurricane and do the exact same step for that, and then it was basically built. That's all there is to it. Probably the easiest wonder weapon to build out of all of them. And at this point, I was finally ready to start the main strategy. So all I would do in order to start the strat is I would go back into spawn, sit at the back, and shoot the hurricane down the middle, which would basically kill all the zombies. Now there was something I needed to look out for here, and that's the zombies that are called Wustling zombies. Now these Wustling zombies, there can only be 2 at any one time in a round, but they have these giant ass clubs, and whenever they're damaged to a certain extent, they will basically kind of stumble backwards, get ready to charge at you, and then charge at you with the club. And these guys are really annoying because they do 2 hits of damage every time they hit you, regardless of if they're charging or not. However, they do have a weak spot which I would use in order to kill them for the first 50-60 rounds if my Tesla guns didn't kill them, and that is the spine on their back. So something I would do when I was out of Tesla gun ammo is I'd basically damage them with the sap, because the sap was able to damage them enough in order to get them to charge, even in the higher rounds. And then I would basically, when they're staggering in order to get ready to charge at me, just move behind them and shoot them in their spine. Thankfully, when you camp, you are able to pretty much kill the Wustling zombies right then and there. It kind of depends on where they spawn, because if they spawn outside the spawn room, sometimes they'd be able to stand by you. And it can be very risky at times camping here. But I think after about 3 or 4 hurricane shots, the wustlings will die. And you can kind of like pace out your shots so you're not wasting them that much. So yeah, I'd just be shooting my hurricane down this lane until about like around 50-60 without using my specialist as much as possible. And this is because the more you use your specialist, the more points it takes in order to recharge it. I don't know like the max amount of points it takes to recharge it. It might be something like 20,000 points, but I really have no idea. And something else to note about this game is there isn't Juggernog in this game. As you'll see, my blitz or perks at the bottom left hand corner, I have stamina up. The finger pointing thing that it looks like is speed cola. The bullets is double tap, and the kind of medicine looking thing is quick revive. So what they did is they actually replaced the Juggernog machine with the armor system. And I can remember on launch people weren't very happy about this, but honestly I think it kind of fits the theme of World War II. But the way it works is you are a 3-hit down unless you buy armor, in which you will be a 6-hit down. So what it will be is you'll have regular health, but after the 3rd hit you'll hear one of your shields being broken, and if you want that shield back you either have to have like a perk on with your ability, or you have to go to the armor buy. And initially the armor only costs 500 points, but the more you have to buy the armor, the more expensive it gets, all the way until 10,000 points. And once it reaches 10,000 points, it will no longer get more expensive, and it will stay there. But as you can imagine, with that being the case, it kind of means that the more damage you take, you know, the less points you're gonna have, and this can get pretty difficult if you're not making a lot of points. But anyway, from about round 60 onwards, for the rounds I didn't really get ammo, or I didn't think I was going to get a max ammo, I would then start using my free fire ability on those rounds. And the cool thing about free fire is, as well as giving you unlimited ammo for 20 seconds, you can also get one of your bullets back if you're down to 0 and 0 in your wonder weapon or any of your weapons. You'll get an extra mag back. Something else to know about World War II is the drops are the same pretty much as Treyarch drops, except there's no Carpenter, and they added in a new drop which basically refills your special meter. But you can also overcharge your special meter to have double the length. And the reason this is so cool is that I'm pretty sure it only classes it as one use whenever you use it, which means if you have like 40 seconds worth of use, you can use that, and it technically only classes it as one charge, meaning it will take the same amount as it would if you only had one charge in order to refill for the next charge. However, the only way to overfill your specialist is by getting the drop that does it. And this drop looks like a heart, I think. So for the most part, I'd like to say that I was able to camp in the first room until like the late 80s, early 90s without much issue. There might have been like once or twice I had to go out of the area in order to train a little bit or just get some points to get my ability back. But all in all, I managed to camp decently well, and I had like 800,000 points to the late 80s. And this leads me to the strat I would run whenever I ran out of ammo. And this is where the new sword tech comes in, because people didn't used to do this. So I would start off by switching the fire trap on, if you remember from the well, and this is just to launch myself closer to the blood room. And in this blood room, there's actually a really cool trap. It's called the saw trap, and it basically puts a bunch of saws on the ground, some that are in a static position and some that actually travel around, and they'll just kill all the zombies in that room. And so when the saw trap is on, you'll just sit behind these saws and wait for all the zombies to die. The trap stays on for like 20 to 25 seconds. And what you would do is you would need to get 2 zombies kills with the sword behind this sword trap, and this was so that you could charge up the sword. And the way you do this is there's two swinging modes for the sword. The first one is without ADSing. It will just swing the sword like normal, like in a kind of side motion. But when you ADS with the sword, it will do a more powerful strike that gives you quite a gruesome animation for about 5 seconds. And it will also allow you to scavenge either some points or some ammo or just something like that. And so if I'd managed to charge up the sword, what I would do is I would basically kill one zombie doing that animation, but instead of taking damage from all the zombies around me, it emits this kind of red light around me, around the base of my feet, and this will instantly kill any zombies around me and make me invulnerable from attacks from like the whistling zombies or the bomber zombies. And you basically get 3 attacks like this where you do a charged melee and it will leave this red glow on the ground which will kill everything. But after the third one, the red glow from the sword will be gone and you will no longer be able to use it until you get another 2 kills the same way, but you won't have the effect, and this will then charge up the sword again. But take into consideration, whenever I was charging up the sword, you can still be hit by the zombies and they will damage you. It's only when you have a charge on the sword where that little circle will appear or the little glow, and that's when you are invulnerable for those 5 seconds. And so something I would start doing in the later 90s is whenever the trap wasn't on, I would do a little horde up in the sword trap room, and then I would kill with one of these charges, and then the sword trap would be ready again. So this just allowed me some more leeway, and I didn't have to worry as much about getting the 2 kills every single time the sword trap was on. I could worry about it every 3 times instead. And then if I was unlucky enough to not get 2 zombies coming down the saw path when the saw was on, what I would end up doing is just running around the saw room, waiting for the trap to be able to switch back on again, and then switch on the trap and repeat the process. But yeah, this new sword tech was incredibly useful and honestly really fun to do, because whenever I had ammo for my Tesla gun, I would go back into spawn and shoot the zombies in spawn, and then when I ran out and I didn't have any free fire or anything, I would just go into the saw trap room and run the trap strat and sword strat, I guess. And so by doing this strat, I was able to complete round 100 in 5 hours and 19 minutes, which is honestly pretty quick. Don't get me wrong, nowhere near as fast as the speedruns for this, which are under 4 hours, but just for like a zombies map in general, it wasn't too slow. A couple of quick things to mention before I do go on to the next map is every 5 rounds on these maps, I think except for the survival maps, you will get something called a pest round, which are these fast but weaker zombies that will run at you, and there's a lot less of them on the pest rounds than regular zombies. And so these are guaranteed to come every 5 rounds. There's no like 4 or 5 rounder, and you can consider these the max ammo rounds of the game. And for those of you who are wondering about the higher rounds, round 100 plus, whether there's insta-kill rounds, there is not. But what they decided to do is rounds 100 plus, you will not get pest rounds anymore. And that's because the amount of zombies is capped to either round 99 or 100. And this means the amount of zombies is never going to change past round 100. You will have the exact same amount of zombies on round 100 as you would on like round 150. It's the same. But with probably the best map on World War II over and done with, it was time to go on to arguably the worst map on World War II, which is the Darkest Shore. Now, I have a history with the Darkest Shore, in which this map doesn't like me, and I don't like this map. And that's because if you want to play high rounds fast on this map, you're going to have to play a little bit risky, but you could obviously play a slower strategy, but it's going to take you double the amount of time. But before we get into the map itself, I would be changing my specialist this time round from free fire to shell shock. And what shell shock does is it just knocks back the zombies so that it gives you a bit of a breather. So if you think you were about to get trapped, for example, you can use shell shock, it'll knock the zombies back, and then you'll be able to try and escape. And I didn't do this on my first attempt, but I did change one of my modifiers. So I swapped out resourceful for extended zone, I believe it's called. And what this does is it will create that knockback effect, but it will also leave a kind of circular zone on the ground. And this zone will basically prevent any zombies from getting close to me while my specialist is active. But let's jump right into the map, because this has quite a unique starting point. You'll be spawning in on a beach, and there'll be zombies already spawned in. And this is technically round 0, and what you can do is you can actually despawn these zombies on the beach by going from one end to the other, and then you can have these extra zombies spawn in on round 1. And this will basically give you an extra like 4,000 points or so, which is just pretty cool. But on this map, I'd end up playing in the spawn room till about round 5, and then I would leave in order to start a couple of things. So something I needed to do was look around this map for these different coordinate pieces in order to upgrade the saw wonder weapon, which I was going to be using throughout this game. And they're in 6 different locations, but the location is the same each time, but it will give you a different piece with a different number on each time. And they can be in a different position each time. So if I got like a 5 in the 5th position, that would mean my code would be something something something. That would be for the first part, and then something 5 something. And basically these codes are for the artillery cannon, and you're basically getting these coordinates to like line up the artillery cannon to shoot in the specific spot. And when you do that, it will actually drop down a piece to upgrade the saw. But generally you'll get like a code that ranges from like plus or minus 11 for the first one to like plus or minus 50 for the second one. But once I'd gone around the map, gotten that code and all my perks, I would be using the exact same perks as last time: stamina up, quick revive, double tap and speed cola. I would then be going around the map to get the saw parts, the first one being around the artillery area, and the second one always being on this head of a dead guy. And now I had all the parts in order to just craft the regular saw. And now in order to just upgrade this saw, what I would need to do is rip out a spine from one of the pest zombies. And to do this, all I had to do was use a charged melee attack, and then press my interact button, which in this case would be F because I'm on PC. And this would allow me to rip out his spine and pull out like a charged red vial thing. And then all I had to do was place this vial on the bench where I built the saw, and then I had to get kills by the table. And so at this point I had the rip saw, but it was now upgraded, so instead of just being able to melee with it, I was able to actually shoot the saws out. Once I'd got all this done though, it was time for me to get everything in order to unlock the Pack-a-Punch. And the way to do that on this map is you have to ride these minecarts to each different location, and every time you do this you've got to pick up like this green kind of battery looking thing. I think there might be like some sort of mechanical cylinders. But after getting all 3, I would then make my way up to Pack-a-Punch and place these cylinders in their slots. You just interact with them in order to place all of them down, and then that would unlock Pack-a-Punch. And so now I would put my sap into the Pack-a-Punch machine and upgrade it, because once again the sap is an incredibly good weapon, and this is what would basically be carrying me through most of the games. But anyway, in order to get the final part I needed in order to be fully set up, I needed to go through the first part of the Easter egg, which required me cutting off this guy's head that's near the Pack-a-Punch machine and putting it on this other guy's body, or maybe it's his body, I'm not too sure. And now this would start off a kind of lockdown sequence where I had to go around these 3 valves when the fire wasn't on them and basically turn them all off and that would be that step done. Now, if there are any unfortunate souls that have had to play this map at one point in their life, you might have remembered there was this 4-armed little creep, apparently they're called mutilars or something, and these are very fast and very strong and can kill you very quickly. Thankfully though, there's a way to basically get them to stop spawning in altogether, and all you have to do is get past like the start of the Easter egg and then don't pick up any of the radio parts, and then he just won't spawn in again. And so that's another bonus to doing this start of the Easter egg, so that's pretty cool. I never had to see him other than like once per game. But back to this Easter egg, once I'd completed the lockdown step, I basically interacted with this guy again, and the door basically rips open his body. It's really fucking gruesome. But that would open up this area, and then a Brenner would spawn in. You know, that big guy with a flamethrower from Final Reich? Yeah, you'll be seeing him a lot. He spawns in, and I basically killed him with my sap very quickly. I think it was like either 1 or 2 mags, and it just demolishes him. And then I was able to get out of the lockdown area, and this is good because it starts the next step of the Easter egg that I had to do, which is shoot down these planes. So I made my way up to the other side of where Pack-a-Punch is. So there's Pack-a-Punch. There was a door that I would be keeping closed for the strategy, and then that other side there were artillery cannons, and I would get myself on one of these artillery cannons and shoot down all the planes. And this was needed because after you've shot down all the planes, I would have to go back down to where I met the Brenner zombie and activate like a generator or something there. Just press a button and this would lift up a bomber zombie. But thankfully, this bomber zombie is friendly, and what I had to do is protect this bomber zombie all the way until where the main cannon is that I had to use the coordinates to shoot in order to get the upgrade part for the saw. So I had to protect him going all this way, which is the reason I had to shoot down the planes, because if you don't shoot down the planes, they will then kill the battery zombie. And basically, once I'd protected him all the way, he would place the battery in the battery holder, and he would basically die at that point, and that's that step done. And so all I had to do now was fill up the battery with energy, which is just by killing zombies, and then I was able to fire the artillery cannon. And like I said, if I got the coordinates right, it would shoot and drop down this part that I would then install into the Pack-a-Punch machine, and then I was finally able to Pack-a-Punch my upgraded saw. And this is actually essential to the strategy because the rip saw, or the upgraded version which is called the RIP saw, is actually a one-hit kill throughout the entire game on just regular zombies. But something else that's pretty cool is any weapon that is able to be Pack-a-Punched in the Pack-a-Punch machine, you can also buy ammo from the Pack-a-Punch machine. So that goes for the sap, that goes for this rip saw, because obviously you upgrade it via the Pack-a-Punch machine. And so whenever I ran out of ammo on the RIP saw, I would go back to the Pack-a-Punch machine and buy ammo for it. Well, I wouldn't exactly go back for ammo, because I would be camping by the Pack-a-Punch machine, as this happens to be one of the fastest strats on this map. Unfortunately, at this point, I wasn't fully set up, because there was a weapon I actually wanted from the mystery box, and this weapon is actually really, really good. Not good in the sense that it would be able to kill zombies later on, but more so that it would be able to stagger zombies very quickly and be a good source of like safety. And so, as well as getting Jack in the boxes from the mystery box, I would then be hitting for this weapon. And for those of you who don't know, there are about 70 different weapons in the mystery box on World War II zombies. And so, unfortunately for me, this meant that in every game I played, except for one, it took me about 100 hits of the mystery box in order to get this weapon. And the weapon I was looking for is called the ribeye rolls, and when you upgrade it, it becomes an explosive full auto weapon, and it manages to stagger zombies very quickly. But now I was finally fully set up, and I can show you guys what the strategy is on this map. So for the first 40 to 45 rounds or so, I would be using the ribeye rolls and the sap in order to make a shitload of points. This was just to make sure that if I was having a bit of a rough time camping and I kept losing all my shields, that I would be able to constantly buy my shields back. Then from that point onwards, probably around 45, I would basically be using the saw in order to kill all of the zombies. And I would basically be shooting the saw wherever I saw them spawn in. And the only issue with this strategy is when a whistling zombie appears. Because what you have to try and do is you have to aggro him by shooting like 1 or 2 saws into him, and then you have to get to the back of him and do a charged melee attack into his spine, and this will insta-kill him. And it sounds easy enough in theory, but when you've got 2 of them at once, it can be a major fucking pain in the ass, and this is how I kept dying in my games. Because one of my attempts, I think I died on like late 50s, like 58 or something. My second attempt, I think I died on around 61, just as I came back from a break. But on my third attempt, I did actually manage to make it to round 100. But let me tell you a little bit about how I managed that. So as you can imagine, World War II isn't the most stable of games, and it's got a few bugs here and there. And so what can end up happening is in certain places around the map, these whistling zombies will get stuck, and the whistling zombies never despawn, which means they will stay stuck in that position forever. And as far as I know, there are 2 places this can happen. The first one is where you're camping. Sometimes the whistling zombie will not always be fully above the ground. They'll actually start going slightly under the ground, and if they're under the ground enough, what will happen is like when they swing, they'll fall down the elevator shaft and get stuck at the bottom of it. The second place is where you're going up from spawn. There's like a little drop down area, and this is where mine got stuck in my third game. And for some reason, instead of dropping down, he'll just be stuck up there doing like absolutely nothing. Like he'll just be walking into what seems to be like an invisible wall, and he just won't be able to drop down. Now for world records, this actually isn't allowed and you've got to kill them, but if I'm being completely honest, I do not care. I wasn't going for any record. I was playing to round 100, and even if I was playing for like a record, I still would probably try and trap them, because I just hate this map. This map absolutely sucks. And a final little detail, and this is quite funny, is if you let zombies get too close to you on this map when you're in the elevator, you can actually get teleported a few feet in front of you. I've got no idea why this happens, but it's really fucking funny. You'll just get teleported in front of you, just slightly. Really weird, really cool. And what I would do is I would either go back into the spot, but if there was like a whistling or something, I'd probably just leave and then go back in afterwards. A little quick note about something I would do, by the way, is when I was down to my last quick revive, whenever I was like losing any sort of armor, what I would do is activate my shell shock ability in order to push back all of the zombies. And once I'd done that, I would then leave the area with a full upgraded saw, well, full ammo in it, and I would go down, grab armor, and then run down all the way to the spawn area. I would then get as many points as I could in order to get my ability back, and then run all the way back up to the Pack-a-Punch machine and start camping there again. This was just for extra safety, so I made sure I got to round 100, and it did work. I did get to round 100. It took something like 6 hours, which is faster than I thought it would be, to be honest. Still, I think it was the slowest out of all of them. I could be wrong though. But finally, the worst map on World War II was done, and it was time to go into the Shadowed Throne. The Shadowed Throne is actually quite interesting to me, but maybe this is just because of the setup, and you have to basically complete the Easter egg, except for the boss fight. in order to get set up on this map. But something else that's quite unusual is that I would be using the frontline specialist ability, and I would be using resourceful, determination, and hand-to-hand as my modifiers. I also needed to make sure I loaded in with sticky bombs, and this was in order to unlock Pack-a-Punch easier. But anyway, when you activate frontline, it will allow you to deal double damage with melee weapons. And then when I activated frontline, determination would give me 2 of my shield points back. And also the hand-to-hand would increase my melee damage while using frontline. So I think you guys can see where the strategy is going with this. And yes, the main strategy on this map is a melee strategy. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I'm going to do a bit of a rush job of explaining like the different parts of the Easter egg. And this is because I don't really want to get too into it, nor can I really remember all of them. So to start things off, I'd start off in the spawn room and play there till about around 4 or 5 like normal with the sap. I would then dip out and go up to like the main square kind of area, and there's this radio. There'll be like 2 letters and numbers or something, and then I would go over to the church area where it shows a map and some like coordinate looking things, and you find the letters and numbers that correspond to what was on your radio, and these are the radio frequencies that you've got to tune the radio to. Now this radio, by the way, is fucking finicky. If you don't get them pretty much precisely on the exact numbers it was showing, it's not going to work. So just be careful of that if you actually want to do this. But once I'd set the frequencies correctly, I would then be told to shoot a supply box, which would set off some flares, and these flares would then attract this Zeppelin, and this Zeppelin would give me these charged zombies, which would be needed for the Easter egg. And the first use I'd have for them is being able to craft the wonder weapon, because what I have to do is charged melee one of them with my shovel and interact while I'm doing that in order to pull out this spine thing, I guess. And then I'd also have to look for a battery, and once I had this battery, I'd go close to where spawn is. There's this gate. I'd place the battery in it, go the other side, pick the battery up, and this would then allow me to craft the wonder weapon. The wonder weapon's called the Wonderbus, and it's basically like charged kind of lightning, the same kind that you see from the Zeppelin. And it's not an understatement when I say that this wonder weapon is complete and utter dog shit. Like, it's cool in the way it works, but in comparison to like the Tesla guns and the Ripsaw, it's got nothing on them. It's trash. But it is needed to unlock Pack-a-Punch, because what I would be doing now is I would have to throw 2 of my sticky grenades onto these different panels. The first one is in the spawn room, the second one is in the actual Pack-a-Punch room itself. And once I'd done that, it would reveal these kind of Tesla coil things that need to be charged up with the Wonderbus. So I'd shoot the Wonderbus at these panels that had been opened, and once I charged both of them up, this would unlock Pack-a-Punch. So, as you can guess, the weapon I would be Pack-a-Punching is the sap. And I'm not gonna lie, I got really lucky with getting a double points, and I would just point horde with the sap, and I had like 8,000 points by round 7. But anyway, it was time for me to start the Easter egg off, and in order to do this, you basically have to get 3 different melee weapons from 3 different kind of areas. And the easiest one, in my opinion, would be the baseball that you get from the smuggler. In order to do this, I would basically be going to this like cash register, and I would be shooting the Wonderbus at it in order to get it to open up, and at the bottom it would be showing me some frequencies that I would need to input on the radio again. Once I'd inputted these frequencies, I would then get to contact someone called the smuggler. Honestly, this guy's a dickhead. He'll basically require you to give him a weapon, and this weapon is determined by these bullets that are at the side of the Wonderbus wonder weapon where you build it. And so whatever bullets show on the table, that's the type of weapon you have to give him. In my case, I think it was like an SMG. It's a really weird step, and honestly, because not many of the Easter egg guides that came out actually knew about this, they just gave him like random weapons until he took one of them. So it turned out, like, I don't know bullets and weapons and stuff like that really. Mine was quite a small bullet though, so I figured it would have been a pistol. It wasn't. And then I got the Type 100, which is like a small SMG. At least I thought it was, but he didn't take that one either. And I think eventually he ended up taking the MP40. I wish I knew, like, the bullets and weapons and stuff like that, but I've just got no idea. But once I'd given him this weapon, it was basically a case of going around the map and finding him, like, 2 rounds later. And so I did the same thing as before at that point. I would put a nade on the ground. I think you can knife it if you need to. This will open up the vent. And now I had to drop him. I think it was 1,750 jolts. Those are the points in this game. I think it's the first time I've mentioned it actually. But yeah, I'd give him these points. And then he'd be satisfied. And I could finally go down to where the Wonderbus is. There'll be a door. Gotta knife this door. And eventually a Wussling will come out. Kill the Wussling, and then the baseball bat should be on the ground. And so once I had this weapon, I would be placing it in this kind of weapon slot that's just outside the church, and this is the first out of 3 melee weapons I'd need. Next up was the axe, and to do this one, I had to find, once again, a frequency, would you believe it, for the radio, and these are scattered around the map. I've honestly got no idea where all the parts are, but I eventually found mine by this elevator lift that was just up the stairs from the spawn room. And then I put this in, and what it would start doing is sending me some Morse code. So I obviously did the smart thing and got up a Morse code translator, inputted the code, and apparently the code was incorrect. And I had a fucking nightmare with this, by the way, because my map was bugged. Because what you have to do is you have to put these Morse code coordinates into the map in the church. But the thing with the map is it just wouldn't work. And I double and triple and quadruple checked that the code that I inputted was right. And it was right, but it would not work. And the reason that it didn't work is because my map was actually bugged. Because what would happen is, I figured this out by going down on the map as much as I could. And what ended up happening is the magnifying glass disappeared off the fucking map. And so normally the map only goes down to 25, but for some reason the magnifying glass could go down all the way to, I think it was 31 or something like that. And so at this point I figured out what I needed to do, because it couldn't go above 6. And so 6 on the y-axis was basically my starting point. And so I basically needed to compensate for the map being bugged, and once I'd done this, the code I actually thought was correct was in fact correct, and I managed to finally get that step done. But anyway, after struggling for this for about 20 minutes, I finally inputted the correct coordinates on the map, and this then allowed me to get the bowl. So after getting this bowl, I then had to place it up top by this head, and I actually had to take the head, place it on this armor stand, and then basically kill a charged zombie at the armor stand. It would charge up this head. I would then pick up the head, place it down on the bowl or something like that. And then I had to get a bunch of zombie kills next to it. And after I'd got enough, it would unlock this drawer, which would give me access to the axe. And the axe is honestly pretty cool, because you can basically do a massive charged attack with it, and sprint a lot faster with it than you could with any of the others. But anyway, I'd place it down in the placeholder next to the baseball bat, and now it was time for me to get the third, final, and most annoying one to get, which is the dagger, but it is actually the best melee out of the 3. And in order to do this, I think I had to like get some film reel and use the blunderbuss or like just a regular weapon to shoot another film reel down. And once I'd got both of these, it would ping me like something on the theater screen. It basically shows a map of the map you're playing, right? So you have to go to the dot on the map. There'll be a zombie. You've got to kill a specific amount of zombies in this area, and once it stopped charging the thing on the ground, that is the number that corresponds to your code. So for example, the first one took me like 9 kills in order to charge it up, and the second one was something like 4. So my code would start off with 94, and it's a 4-digit code, and once you got it, you then have to go to this safe and input the code. And honestly, this wouldn't be that much of an issue if the game devs has decided on solo that the zombies wouldn't attack you when inputting the code on the safe. But that's not the case. The zombies still attack you, and so you've got a very limited amount of time as a solo player in order to input this code, and it's just a very poor game design from the devs. So not only do you have to deal with that, you also have to input the code precisely on the number. There's like absolutely no leeway on this, and you have to input the code left for the first number, right for the second, left for the third, and right for the fourth. And once you've done that completely precisely, you will then be able to open the safe and get the dagger. Now this must have taken me close to about 10 rounds to do, because it was getting to the point where I basically had to do it during a round transition, and it was just a major pain in the ass. But I'll tell you the cool thing about this dagger. When you go and charge melee a zombie and you don't have any shields on you, what you can do is you can charge melee a zombie. It will only take like 1 to 2 seconds compared to like the 5-second animation of the other ones, and you will get one of your shield charges back. But now I had all 3 melee weapons. I put all of them down in their respective slots just outside of the church, and it was time for me to just get a bunch of different types of zombie kills. I think I needed like some bomber zombies, some pest zombies, some charged zombies, and regular zombies or something. Actually, I don't think I needed bomber. I think it's just regular, pest, and the charged zombies. And once I'd got enough of them, it was then finally charged up completely, and it was time for me to start on the final step I had to do of the Easter egg. And what I needed to do is go through the door that opened up after I'd gotten all the kills, and shoot this like red glowing thing on top of the area I was in with the blunderbuss in order to start this final step of the Easter egg that I had to do. And this involved just turning these statues to face the correct way, and there were like 4 different things I had to do with this. I had to do 4 separate times, and once I'd got each one done, it would spawn in like more and more zombies, and it would obviously signify that I was done. And after getting the statues to face the right way, thanks to a puzzle solver online, which basically told me how to, you know, shoot them in like what order and all that stuff, so I didn't have to figure out for myself. I then had these little ravens. Then I had to put the ravens in the correct position, and once I'd finally done all of that, which took me like over 2 fucking hours, I would finally have the sword that I worked my fucking ass off for. So this weapon is called the Blade of Barbarossa, and what it is when you do the regular melee with it, it will swing out a red kind of energy that will kill any zombies in its way within about 2 or 3 hits. And bear in mind, this is a melee weapon and it doesn't have any ammo, which means you can infinitely do this. The only problem with this is the whistling zombies will still need to take a couple of hits to die. And by a couple, I think I mean something like 20. But thankfully, what you can do is you can basically kind of loop these whistling zombies around as you're damaging them, because they'll do this charge attack. It is still really sketchy, and this isn't as easy of a strategy as you might think it is. But this was basically the strategy I would be doing throughout the entire game. And out of all of the melee strategies, this is by far the most fun, because it's pretty hectic, even though you are just, you know, meleeing the zombies. And it's because of the whistling zombies, if I'm being honest. These whistling zombies are a major pain in the ass, but they are the reason that you can't just, you know, 100% macro this map. And so for my first proper attempt at the map, I think I was doing alright. I think by round 80 I'd only taken like 1 or 2 downs, but by round 89 I no longer had any quick revives left, and I had to start playing it a little bit more cautiously. So something you might notice as I'm swinging this sword and killing the zombies is that I'm not getting any points, and that's a bit of a problem for the specialist, since you need points in order to get stuff for your specialist, and you need points in order to buy armor. And so what I would end up doing when I was down to 0 revives is I would spend some time after using my ability going outside of the area just up top and shooting the zombies with the sap in order to get my 10,000 points for armor and in order to charge up the specialist. I don't know if it was like 10,000 or 15,000. And the coolest thing is, because they were in such a straight line as I was exiting the area, I was able to get these the specialist charged back up within something like, what, 10-15 seconds? And then once it was charged back up, I would make my way back down into the area and start swinging the sword again. And this was just to play super safe, because when I'd noticed I'd lost 2 of my shields, what I would do is instantly activate my specialist in order to gain my 2 shields back, and then kind of chill out swinging my sword in the area because it deals more damage because of all the mods I have and its frontline, which doubles my melee damage anyway. And once I'd used it again, I would exit the area, get my specialist back, and then start just camping in the area with the sword. And I did thankfully manage to get to round 100 on my first proper attempt that went past round 50. And as much of a pain in the ass this setup was, it was kind of interesting to learn and pretty fun as well, except for obviously the finicky parts. But it was definitely quite interesting. But it was time for me to move on to the next map now, which is Bodega Santis, which is the first out of the 3 survival maps on World War II. So World War II did something quite interesting with the launch of DLC 3, in the fact that you didn't actually get any round-based maps, really. You had these kind of Easter egg maps where you'd go to round 10 and that would be it. And this is basically called the Tortured Path. And what you would have to do in order to unlock the round-based maps, and this was just on launch of the game, is you would have to complete these Easter eggs, these 3 Easter eggs back to back, so Bodega, USS Mount Olympus, and Blood Altar. And if you manage to successfully do these back to back, you would then unlock the round-based survival maps and go to as high of a round as you want to. Now, me being a high round player, this fucking sucked on launch because I just wanted to play the round-based, but I did manage to do these Easter eggs with a couple of people. Now, there isn't really that much to say about Bodega, but what I would be going for setup-wise is I would be trying to get the Tesla gun, the Hurricane, out of the box, because they're just straight up in the box on this map. And I would also be going for the ribeye rolls, for the point weapon, and to be able to stun the zombies, and also for insta-kills. And there is actually one final part, which actually only got discovered very recently, and that's the fact that you can get the Sword of Barbarossa on each of the 3 maps. And in order to do this, there'll be 7 different runes around the map that you have to pay 1,750 points to, and once you've done this, you then basically have to down yourself within this kind of glowing white circle, and once you've done that, you will then be revived. You don't need quick revive, by the way, but you will then be revived and you will have the Sword of Barbarossa. Now, the Sword of Barbarossa is actually quite a bit different to the Blade of Barbarossa, in the fact that 1, it's more powerful, and 2, it has some different abilities. So it's stronger in the fact that you can kill fucking wustlings with it very quickly. And the second ability for it is when you, I think after you've got like 50 kills with it or something, you then get some sort of charge on it. And this, if you have like a shield missing, for example, will give you one of your shields back. And what you'll do is you'll do this like backhand kind of swipe, and it will basically add one more shield point back to your person. But since I was running the Hurricane on this map, and it's got quite a fast camping spot, I decided it would be best for me to use free fire on this map rather than anything else. Now, if I'm being perfectly honest, the first 60 rounds or so, I had completely forgotten how to play this map. Like, I had the general gist, but I didn't know like exactly where to shoot my Tesla gun. And this actually significantly slowed me down, because there's a specific part that you want to shoot your Tesla gun in. So let me explain how I fucked up in the early game. So I would have the Hurricane, the ribeye rolls upgraded, and I would have the Sword of Barbarossa. And what I would be doing is I would be camping in the area where you'd normally be camping, but I was shooting directly towards the end of the kitchen area, and then also to the outside door area. But what I actually needed to be doing for that initial first shot is shooting it inside the window in this particular direction, as what I think happens is the end of the shot actually manages to hit a master spawn. And what that means is it basically kills the zombies before they're actually able to spawn into their respective locations. Now, I could be wrong in thinking that it's a master spawn. It might just be killing the zombies that are over the spawns, like because there's 2 spawns outside in the windows. But if it is a master spawn, and I think it might be, the way these work is the zombies all spawn in this master spawn area first, but within like a split second, like 0.01 of a second or something like that, they will then disappear and go into the different spawn locations where the master spawn like distributes the zombies. So there would be some outside in the area where they're coming in from, and there'd be they would go into the 2 spawns that were just outside the windows. But anyway, shooting this initial bullet in the window in this particular direction ended up speeding me up a shit ton. It basically like halved the time that it would have taken me otherwise. And I actually relearned a little trick when playing this map, and that's thanks to the current 100 speedrun on this map. And this is a trick involving using the Hurricane on free fire. And what you do is, after you shoot a shot of the Hurricane, you pull out one of your equipment, whether it be a monkey bomb or a throwing knife or just anything. And what you can do is switch immediately back after pulling it out and switch back to your Hurricane, and you can actually immediately fire it again instead of having to wait for that little like half a second to a second cooldown of not being able to shoot the weapon. And I wish I'd remembered this for the final Reich, because that would have made camping it quite a bit faster and easier. But overall, it really helped out with this strategy and allowed me to just absolutely smash through the rounds. I did unfortunately take it down on round 97, but other than that, this game was relatively quick and easy. Something I should note is on insta-kills, when I had the ribeye rolls, I would be going outside and shooting them into the kind of grassy areas, because this was insanely fast. This would be killing the zombies probably as fast a rate as camping in the building using free fire. And also, when I didn't have Hurricane ammo, I would be using the sap in order to get points back. I actually ended up trading out the ribeye rolls for the sap later on, because the sap is faster at getting points. And then I would go back to camping with free fire in the building, because I think this was faster than actually using the Sword of Barbarossa, in the area that was just outside. But you can't actually do this the whole game because there's something with shooting a lot of like different bullets and the game crashing. Not too sure about all of that, but yeah. To round 100, this wasn't particularly an issue, and I managed to get to round 100 in about 4.5 hours. One last thing to note actually, because I really haven't said anything about this, is on 2 of the 3 survival maps, so Bodega Santis and on the Blood Altar map, you will get Brenner rounds every 10 rounds. And the Brenner has a lot more health than the zombies up until a certain point in which his health gets capped. And this is actually quite important to note because the way the wonder weapons work, I believe anyway, is they basically do just enough damage in order to kill regular zombies on the map. So let's say on round 10 for example, they probably only do like a few thousand damage in health. But when it gets to like around 50-60, it's starting to do tens to hundreds of thousands of damage, and going all the way up until like round 100, I think it's starting to do like millions of damage points to the zombies. So that means to begin with, these wonder weapons are going to be very, very weak against the Brenner from like rounds 20-30 onwards. That is until you get to about round 60, in which the wonder weapon is able to start like either 1 or 2 hitting him, and then like by round 80 he'll just be disintegrated by the wonder weapon. So that was just a cool feature I wanted to let you guys know about. But with Bodega Santis out of the way, this is honestly probably joint favourite map on World War II, if not just slightly behind the Final Reich. It's a really cool map, but with that out of the way, it was time to go on to the easiest map on World War II, in my opinion, which is USS Mount Olympus. If I'm being completely honest, for these next 2 maps, there's not going to be much to say, because it's more or less the same as the previous map, but only even easier. So for the early part of the game, I would spawn in with the sap, and just use it in order to get some points and melee them with the shovel. Then I would also hit the box for the jack in the boxes, but I would also buy the MP40. And oh, I actually forgot to mention this on the previous map. In order to unlock Pack-a-Punch on these 3 survival maps, you have to go around the map and charge up these batteries. There's 3. The first one unlocks on like round 1, the second one unlocks on round 5, and the third one unlocks on round 10, I believe. And once all 3 batteries are charged up, you can then go ahead and Pack-a-Punch your weapons. Something else to note on these survival maps is that you don't have to open any doors, because there aren't any doors to open. The entire map is able to be played immediately from when you spawn in. So between the first 10 rounds, I would upgrade the sap, have an MP40, and I would get 3 out of my 4 perks, which would be Stamina Up, Speed Cola, and Double Tap, and then I would go ahead and buy Quick Revive as well. This is after getting the Sword of Barbarossa, of course, because once again, there are 7 different runes around the map, and what I would be doing is paying 1,750 points to each of these runes. Once I'd done that, this white glowing circle would appear on the map. It would be on the top of the deck, and I would down myself and I would be getting the Sword of Barbarossa. And so in order to do the strategy that I was going to be doing, I would need a mod called Discipline, and this increases my weapon accuracy and damage while crouching or prone. And this basically allowed me to kill the bomber zombies in 2 hits. And the cool thing about USS Mount Olympus is that this is the only map on World War II where Wussling zombies do not spawn. So the only things I had to deal with would be regular zombies and bomber zombies. And what I decided to do, in order to save myself some time IRL, is I would basically be putting on a macro and going to sleep while doing this, because it was quite literally that safe and easy. And so across the next 6 hours and 40 minutes or so, I would be swinging this sword without even being there, And I managed to get to round 100 doing this, and I only actually lost one shield while being AFK here. And that is quite literally all I needed to do for USS Mount Olympus, because this sword is genuinely that strong. So, Blood Altar was the only map that actually had the Sword of Barbarossa discovered quite a few years ago. And this was probably because the runes were fucking massive on this map, and I believe they might have had something to do with just the regular Easter egg in general, where you could get the Sword of Barbarossa at the end of doing the main Easter egg. But anyway, I would basically be doing the same as I did on USS Mount Olympus. I would get my perks, I would get set up, and I would get the sap pack-a-punched, and that would pretty much be it after getting the Sword of Barbarossa from going around the map, placing down the runes, downing myself, all that good stuff. I was, you know, basically set up. The only difference to USS Mount Olympus this time is that I wouldn't be able to macro using the sword, and I actually had to be here to play the game. Also, every 10 rounds or so, I would also be getting a Brenner spawn in, so I decided it would be best if I tried to get one of the Tesla guns, and in this case I managed to get the Reaper. And the Reaper is actually quite a cool wonder weapon, because what you do with it is if you have a horde of zombies, you can kill a horde of zombies immediately, but it will save one zombie. And that zombie will basically become a suicide bomber for you and run into the next zombie it sees and kill that as well, creating a relatively large explosion as well. So it would be able to kill like a few more zombies as well as just the full horde. Now, something else to mention is, because I wasn't AFKing this and I wanted to play it as fast as I possibly could, I would also be running Shell Shock, but this time it wouldn't be for safety and it would be for time saving instead and just playing faster. And this is because when insta-kills come around, I would be using my Shell Shock ability in order to kill all the zombies around me. And I had a modifier on that allowed it to basically extend its range in order to kill the zombies that were spawning up top. And so after picking up the insta-kill, I would go just to the back of the altar or like the perk machine, wherever I was camping, and I would activate my ability, and this would start just killing the zombies, and it would kill them for between like 20 to 40 seconds depending on if I had it single or double charged. So on Brenner rounds I would shoot the Brenner with the Reaper, and on just regular rounds and after killing the Brenner I would basically be using the Sword of Barbarossa in order to kill the zombies, the bomber zombies and the whistling zombies. And after swinging the sword for about 5 hours and 10 minutes or so, I managed to get to round 100, and it was time for me to go on to the final World War II map. Now, would you be surprised if I told you that the strategy on this map consists of swinging another melee weapon? I'm sure by this point you probably already guessed that the wonder weapon on this map would be a melee weapon, but this time it isn't a sword, but it's a hammer. Thankfully though, this time I would be getting pest rounds because it wasn't a survival map and it was a regular zombies map. Unfortunately though, getting the hammer requires you to do some Easter egg steps once again, and so let's just get straight into it. Initially you start off in the spawn room, and you actually need to get this battery from the spawn room because this is needed for the Easter egg to get the hammer. So after only spending I think 2 rounds in the spawn room this time, I would make my way down through the tunnels, through the caves and all that stuff, and make my way down to the blood kind of area with this battery in hand and place the battery down. As well as this, I needed to find these 4 different kind of rooms around the map, and this was in order to place them down right next to the battery. By this point I think I would have been on about like round 6 or 7 just to have enough points to open everywhere up to get all the runes and all that kind of stuff. And once I've got all the runes and placed them all down, I would then be starting the next step. And all I had to do for this was, on the opposite side of where you place the runes down, I would have to look for these different symbols and kill a zombie next to the corresponding symbol for each of the runes. It was basically like a 4-rune code that you had to just kill a zombie next to each one, and once I'd done that, these pillars would start lighting up. And now once again, because I couldn't be bothered to deal with any puzzles, I went ahead and had a look at a puzzle solver in order to figure out how to solve this part of the puzzle, this part of the Easter egg. And once I'd got the lightning bolt facing the correct direction, I was then able to go and find the hammer. And now once I'd found the hammer, what I had to do is prone underneath it, and then I would interact with the hammer, and it would basically go back to the lightning bolt strikes, and it would get electrified basically. This would then settle the hammer down, and I would now have the non-upgraded version of the Thulian hammer. So now what I needed to do is go back into spawn, and there'll be a rune that has like a purple spark on it, and then I have to transfer this spark to like 4 different runes around the map. And it's relatively simple enough, except for the final rune, in which you have to get a zombie down in a specific location, and then transfer the rune, the energy onto that zombie, which will then actually spark the rune that you can't reach. Then you have to let that spark kill a zombie, and then you're on to the next step. And this involves sparking this rune, which will then activate another puzzle. And of course, I just went on to yet another puzzle solver, solved the puzzle, and that was that. Because after solving this puzzle, you then have to walk up this invisible looking path, which you can barely see with like lightning strikes and stuff. And then you walk up, it will then eventually lift you up a bit like an elevator, and then it will teleport you to a different location, giving you the upgraded version of the Thulian hammer, and essentially teaching you how to use it. So after I've been taught how to use the hammer by the tutorial in the game, I then was teleported back, and I could start the camping strategy, which was just on the other side of the Thulian archives. Now, I'll admit, I was a little bit dumb to begin with on this map, and I accidentally opened up the wrong side, so I did have to restart, which is why I was like an hour in before I started the strat. But once again, this was another strategy I could essentially macro. I did need to just keep my eye on it a little bit because there are some sketchy situations. But yeah, I'd be sitting against this wall, swinging my hammer, even with whistling zombies on this map. And the reason you can do this is the hammer doesn't actually aggro the whistling zombies, it just knocks them back a little bit. Which means you can just infinitely knock back these whistling zombies and not have any problem. The only problem would be if you get really unlucky with timing and the whistling zombie doesn't actually feel the knockback of the hammer, and it gets a bit too close to you and is able to just club the fuck out of you. And that was the only thing I really had to keep an eye on. But whenever that happened, I would just press my Q ability, which would be frontline again in order to deal more damage and get my shields back. And then that was it for about another 5.5 hours. I would just be swinging a hammer. And that would basically be the end of World War II. And honestly, the game overall is really cool. For high rounds, it's pretty shit except for like 2 maps. But yeah, honestly, although it's probably the most forgotten zombies, it's not actually that bad. It was pretty alright. Though I will say the biggest problem is probably the colour palette. It's very bland for the most part. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, be sure to drop a like, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and also comment down below what your least favourite World War II map is. Hope you all have a great day. Peace.